All right, everybody. I have the great pleasure of speaking to Jared Beck, my friend Jared Beck, who is a brilliant attorney. DNC law. Waged a. He's still waging a noble battle with his wife Elizabeth and Nico House against the DNC. And before we get started, my latest book, Debunking the Trump-Russia Myth, is doing extremely well. And I know that Jared has a book of his own, and he's going to talk about that also. But check out Debunking the Trump-Russia Myth. Jared, thank you so much for coming on again. How you been?
Well, thanks for having me, HA. It's always a pleasure to speak with you. These are crazy times, and I think we're all trying to make sense of what's going on. But I guess under the circumstances, it's one day at a time.
What are your thoughts? I mean, there's so many topics to talk about, but what are your thoughts regarding the Uranium 1 issue?
Yeah, I mean, this has been something that those who have been following the Clintons and have been attuned to the crimes that they've perpetrated on this country, this is something that people have known about for a long time. In fact, the best book that I've read on the topic is Clinton Cash by Peter Schweitzer, which came out in 2005. Okay. Or maybe it was a little after no, I'm sorry, it wasn't 2005, but it was like 2009, I think, or something. But in any case, it's been on the radar for a while. So, the fact that it's just coming into sort of the more general public discourse now, to me, is a sign that, we still have a long way to go to get justice on these issues.
What do you think about the informant? What are your thoughts on
that? I mean, is it surprising that when you lie with pigs that there's going to be informants at some point? I think at this point, we have to see how the process is going to run its course, and if our legal system is capable of prosecuting all the way to the top. I mean, that's my concern at this point, AJ, is, not so much that the evidence isn't out there and hasn't been analyzed, but are we going to get justice for this? I mean, these are heinous crimes against America.
Speaking of heinous crimes and justice, I want to talk about your book, and I want to talk about the DNC lawsuit, but tell us about your book, I guess the experiences that you describe in the book, the name of it, where people can get it, and why what motivated you to write your book?
Well, I've been in seclusion for the past 3 months, writing the first draft of the manuscript, and I'm pleased to say that I turned that in to my editor very recently. And so now, as you know, HA, as a very, very experienced author yourself, the editing process is really where the rubber hits the road when you're writing something. And so that's where we are right now. I'm working with a publisher, Mark Gompert, who's a very experienced editor, and we're exchanging ideas on how to make this book as perfect as possible, because this is I see this as an opportunity to tell a story that really hasn't been told in one cohesive narrative to this point in time. We have a lot of social media discourse out there. We have a lot of great independent journalism out there, but in terms of piecing things together, in terms of what the DNC fraud meant for this country, I think that story needs to be told, and it needs to be told as cogently as possible.
In terms of what's ongoing now, so it's safe to say that the DNC lawsuit is still or the fight is still ongoing. Is that correct?
Absolutely. We're in the appellate court. We've already engaged in briefing some very preliminary issues on appeal, dealing with jurisdiction. And if anybody is interested in following the case as the pleadings get filed and as we proceed in the appellate process, all you have to do is go to the Jank website and go to the DNC lawsuit section, and we have a whole section now devoted to the appellate proceedings, and so you can follow along as we file the papers and the case proceeds on appeal. But yes, we're still very much in the fight. I think we're going to have very, very strong arguments on appeal in the 11th Circuit, and I'm very much looking forward to giving it our best shot in the appellate court.
You know, something that annoys me, and I'm sure it annoys you as well, the ridiculous banter from people that say, oh, well, it was thrown out and you failed and all that, da-da-da. What is the perfect response to those people, the perfect rebuttal?
Well, first of all, I think in terms of the objectives of the case, I think it's already been a success in the sense that let's not forget that the DNC fraud lawsuit was the first place where we heard the DNC admit that it believes it has a right to rig the primaries, which to me is tantamount to admitting that they rigged the primaries. So of course, you know, the mainstream media discourse now is all focused on Donna Brazile as some type of a whistleblower, and some people even want to paint her in some sort of heroic light as revealing that, you know, the DNC rigged the primaries. Of course, she was complicit in the whole thing from the very beginning, and she gave the debate questions to Hillary Clinton while she was, you know, a CNN commentator and a DNC higher up. So, you know, this is totally ridiculous for anyone to paint her in some kind of heroic light. But to get back to your question, you know, people who say that the case isn't a success, I just want to remind you that well before there was Donna Brazile, there was the counsel for the DNC getting up in open court in our case and saying in open court to Judge Locke that the DNC can go into back rooms, smoke cigars, and pick the candidates that way, which to me is a tantamount to an admission that the process is rigged.
This is, I mean, we've touched upon this many times when I've spoken to you and Elizabeth many times, but so you're right. They did admit to rigging the primary. Why? What is it so hard for the brains of people to get that? Why? You would think that journalists out there would want to publicize that the way I've publicized it, the way other journalists have publicized it. What is it the cognitive dissonance? What is this active effort to hide the truth?
Well, I mean, the story of the rigged primary, and this is something that that's a big part of my book, which is really explaining the nuts and bolts of how the process is rigged, because I don't think there's a full understanding of that. I think there's, you know, we think of, you know, some people point to superdelegates, other people point to the Hillary Victory Fund and the financial arrangement, but there's also a story here about media complicity in the entire rigging process. In other words, the mainstream media is a crucial player in all of this, because the DNC rigged the primaries by creating media narratives that made it impossible for Bernie Sanders to gain and the traction he would have needed to have a good showing in those early primaries. In other words, they rigged the invisible primary, which is a term in political science for the period before the actual primaries themselves, when the candidates are getting a lot of media exposure.
Yeah.
And so to get back to your question, HA, and I think it's a very, very important question, the media itself was complicit in the rigging. So when you're complicit, when you're a co-conspirator, you naturally spin the truth in your favor, right? So I think that's what's going on here at the end of the day.
What's going to take place? So I mean, I like to joke around and say pick a crime, any crime, but it's really also pick a scandal, any scandal. So I mean, in addition to Uranium One, in addition to the DNC lawsuit, in addition to all of this, and then the Clinton emails, we can go on forever. And the difference that it's like you don't have to like Trump or you don't have to like. There's no evidence of Russian hacking. There's no evidence. There is evidence for Clinton's crimes. Now we have the issue of Debbie Wasserman Schultz and the Awans.
Right.
So I mean, like it's almost like for the average person, it's just too many issues to wrap their heads around. What do you think takes place with the Awan scandal?
Well, I mean, this is, you know, for me, honestly, it's a toss-up between which is worse, Uranium One or Awan. I mean, they're sort of bad in maybe different ways, but you know, I mean, you're talking about a Pakistani spy ring that has embedded itself in the U.S. Congress. That's not a good thing.
No,
Not a good thing. I mean, and so, you know, on the one hand, the Clinton Foundation is selling off our uranium. And on the other hand, you know, Pakistani spy ring is implementing itself, instantiating itself in our Congress. This is the sign of, to me, of a society that's falling apart at the seams. I mean, maybe that's an unfortunate, pessimistic way of putting it, but I mean, do you have a rosier take on it, AJ?
No, I mean, I think that it's going to be. I always say that no matter how powerful you are, you can't continually commit crimes in the sloppy, brazen manner that both Clintons, especially Hillary Clinton, have done. I do think that she will get indicted either. I mean, then there's the campaign finance issue. I mean, I think you're probably intimately knowledgeable about the campaign finance. I mean, are there the funding of the Fusion GPS dossier by the DNC, which, right. I mean, I put two and two together. I mean, is it safe to say that Bernie Sanders voters helped fund the PP dossier?
I mean, you know, it's an unfortunate way of putting it, but I mean, Bernie Sanders was playing a role within an extraordinarily corrupt system, and I think by virtue of his campaign, he sort of pushed that system to the limits and exposed its flaws. And so, you know, I think. But you know, the issue right now is sort of where do we go from here, in my mind, right? I mean, obviously, the country is going to become more and more and more aware of the deep flaws in our political system that all of these events are revealing in so many different ways. The question for me is, as the country becomes more aware, really, what's the next step for us? That's what concerns me right now.
What do you think the next steps are in terms of? I think that because the Democratic Party is so dysfunctional, that Trump will win again, and that's a virtual certainty in my mind. Yeah. I think then what will take place is an expedited dismantling of the Democratic Party and hopefully a rebuilding. What is that too idealistic?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, there's a prior question, which is the two-party, you know, the duopoly that we live under, I mean, which is really a farce. I mean, this concept that we have a democratic system, but we have only two major political parties that can really elect anyone to office. And so then the question is the preservation of that system something we should be striving for? Because in the scenario you paint, HA, and you characterize it as optimistic, is that in some way, shape, or form, the Democratic Party is rebuilt or resuscitated, reborn.
Yeah.
But is that, I mean, to me, that may be, you know, first of all, we may be deluding ourselves into thinking that this two-party system, which we've had for a long time now in this country, is anything but an impediment to democracy.
Yeah.
And that's what concerns me, is that, you know, the DNC is only really, the DNC falling apart, the Democratic Party falling apart. I mean, I'm not as optimistic as you in terms of the resuscitation of the Democratic Party. I think political parties have come and gone in American politics. It's actually not, it wouldn't be an unprecedented phenomenon for the Democratic Party to fall apart. And I think that if you look at what's going on with their donations now, that's what's happening. They're not able to attract donors. I mean, CNN just put out an article, I don't know if you just saw it today, which said that the donations are at an all-time low. And of course, this is in an environment where everybody is, you know, thinks that they can use Trump as some kind of boogeyman to, you know, prime the donation pump and get it, but it's not happening for them.
Yeah. What I find interesting is every time Democrats try to pin Trump on Russia or anything else, it always comes back to them, almost like a boomerang. It's like a boomerang effect where it comes right back.
Right.
Can you elaborate on that?
So the question is, you know, why is it that they're the ones that, you know, basically created this Russia narrative out of whole cloth, and, you know, at the end of the day, it's the Democrats who have been conspiring with the Russians to sell off those countries' natural resources. Why is that? I don't know. I mean, that may be the realm of psychology more than anything else. I mean, displacement, right? You know, you project, you know, what you yourself are guilty of on your perceived enemies. I mean, God, look at the people, I mean, that have been running the Democratic Party like Podesta. I mean, these people are like, you know, maniacal. I mean, they're pathological. They're, you know, I mean, these are very, very disturbed people. So that's, to me, that's the core of the Democratic Party. I don't see how we resuscitate that, or why you'd want to resuscitate that. I mean, Enron, you know, was a horrible company run by very, very bad people, and it wasn't resuscitated. It died and it never came back.
I agree with you. I agree with you on that. I mean, I guess, you know, the notion of an internal. This is why I disagree with the Justice Democrats model, which I think is ridiculous. To internally, you know, influence the Democratic Party when their existence is predicated upon, you know, cheating and destroying any threat,
right?
Both internal and external, especially on the left. I think that's ridiculous. But hey, I mean, you're right. You're right. There probably needs to be more than just a rebuilding of the Democratic Party. Of the scandals going on right now, the Allen brothers, the DNC lawsuit, the uranium deal, Clinton email investigation, the issues with James Comey, Loretta Lynch. What what do you see as the biggest nightmare politically for Clinton or the Democratic Party?
Actually, I think the thing that's most important that's going on right now politically that connects to the Clintons and everything else in the world is what's going on in Saudi Arabia.
The uranium deal?
No, the Saudi purge of the.
Okay, yeah, I actually did a segment on that. What do you? I like you. I see the correlation between elites going down here. What can you elaborate and give your thoughts on the precedent that it sets?
Yeah, so this is, I think in some ways, and it's almost a paradox or an ironic thing, is that I think that the domestic politics in Saudi Arabia are more germane to sort of the issues that we have in our country than people may realize, because the Saudis are really one of our most important allies, and so tied to how the domestic politics or the politics of this country has been run for so long, out of our view as Americans. I mean, between elites, I'm talking. And so the connection between the Clinton Foundation on the one hand and all of those people that the Crown Prince just purged and locked up in Saudi Arabia is very direct in terms of funding and in terms of the Muslim Brotherhood in Saudi Arabia, which is, I think, if you look at exactly what's going on there, it's very much a reaction against the Muslim Brotherhood, which took root in Saudi Arabia over time, and the monarchy has chosen this point in time to sort of consolidate its power and get rid of what it perceives as a threat to the Saudi royal family. And so, all you have to do is look at Huma Abedin. There's your connection to the Muslim Brotherhood right there, right? And it's a direct connection. I mean, she.
Yeah. Well, I mean, also, it's not just Huma Abedin. It's Al-Walid bin Talal was a big donor, and he's the one who got arrested. I always thought, Jared, that Al-Walid bin Talal was in terms of power, more powerful in Saudi Arabia than the Clintons were in the United States. But maybe I was wrong.
Right, and maybe we were wrong about the Clintons, and that's what we're gonna find out.
Yeah,
that's what we're gonna find out. Now, the fact that the Saudis were able to do it, they're a monarchy. We're not a monarchy.
Yeah,
we're an oligarchy. It's a little different. It's a little different. Less stable than monarchy in some ways. See, like a monarch, when you're a monarchy, you can get rid of your opponents like that. Here, we don't. I don't consider our society to be a democratic society. I consider it to be an oligarchic society.
No, I agree. I agree 100% with you.
But oligarchies are inherently unstable because there's the oligarchic class competes for power, and that's why we're having so much instability politically right now in this country, in my opinion.
Well, also, I mean, it's like what I don't understand is that the Clinton Foundation is an obvious money laundering scheme. It's an obvious. So you have Prince Al-Walid bin Talal. Trump donated. Countries donate $156 million from 85 people donated, and then just happened to miraculously meet with Secretary Clinton. Then you have a weapons deal scandal that David Sirota broke in the International Business Times. David Sirota is on, the Young Turks. So this is like not something that you and I have been categorized, as, the fringe of the left or whatever. This is something like a mainstream liberals, quote unquote, liberals have addressed the corruption.
Right.
And it's like they don't care.
You mean
it's unbelievable.
Well, they're conspirators.
That's true.
The thing is there's a class of people, and there's a that I would characterize as oligarchs, and then there's sort of their sort of ministers of propaganda, and that's the mainstream media. So it's not unexpected that they would avoid these issues at every turn. I mean, the problem that they're having is that we for various reasons, we have unprecedented opportunities for transparency and sharing of information in this day and age. And so it's kind of all come crashing down on their heads.
Yeah.
And so there's people that are holding this sort of hot potato. And they're going down. I mean, look at frickin' Charlie Rose.
Huh. Yeah.
Right? Boom.
Yeah.
Done, right? He's toast.
We can even go closer to home. There's I mean, you don't have to talk about it if you don't feel like it, but I'll be interviewing two women who or journalists who worked with Truth Against the Machine and have their own take on the Jordan Chariton episode of the allegations that rape allegations. Have you been following this? From his Medium article to him getting fired, all of these things. Have you been following what's taking place with Chariton?
Well, here's my take on this. I'm not gonna get into the issue of what happened. There's obviously claims being made on both sides. I think it's a messy situation. My take is this. I mean, I'm looking at the bigger picture, AJ. Okay, you can say what you want about Jordan Chariton, and I've had my differences with him. I know you've had your differences with him, but he was the one progressive reporter that the TYT had on the ground, and I think a lot of the frustration and a lot of the sort of outrage around the Jordan Chariton situation comes from the fact that he's a good reporter, and he did very good work, very good progressive reporting. But he was the only guy.
I agree with that. I agree. He was a good reporter.
I did 2 interviews with him, and they were good interviews. He asked good questions. I know he put in a lot of hard work at Standing Rock. A lot of hard work in Flint, and I don't think anyone should take that away from him. But my issue with the Jordan Chariton situation is, who the hell does the Young Turks have now as an on-the-ground progressive? Like, I love Jimmy Dore. I think he's I've done an interview with him. I know he's affiliated with them, but he's not an on-the-ground reporter. He's a comedian. He's a pundit, but he's not a guy on the ground who breaks stories, right? But who does the Young Turks have now in terms of a progressive voice, in terms of an on-the-ground progressive, shoe leather journalist? Nobody. And so they haven't even said the barest thing about this whole situation to their viewership, as far as I understand. They haven't even addressed the situation. It's like, boom, suddenly he's gone. I mean, to me, that's just bad. That's bad news for them. That's bad news. And I think they've been in trouble for a while.
Well, my take is this. Yes, he was a good reporter. I think that what's coming out, his Medium article was an indictment in and of itself, which I've already eviscerated, and very easy to do. I think in a court of law, he would be toast. Especially since Chelsea Lyons basically called him a liar regarding the beers and all that stuff in the hot tub. But my take on the Jordan situation is, yes, he was a very good reporter. I give him that. I've always given him that. Even when I did my rebuttal videos to when he spent 30 minutes, plus trashing me, Nico, and Tim, I definitely agree with you. TYT has nobody now, an investigative journalist, but I don't really think that he can't be replaced. Number one, I agree with you that he should be replaced with at least somebody. maybe like, pushing the narrative of, hey, there's corruption, I'm going to attack it. But, Cenk Uygur and the Young Turks build their brand on, look at Roy Moore, look what he did. I mean, I haven't seen a trial and jury for Roy Moore. Look at Trump. Look at these GOP sexists.
I mean, are they talking about Conyers? Are they talking about Al Franken? Are they talking, or is it just all one-sided?
No, I mean, Al Franken. They're talking about Al Franken, but what they do is that, I mean, the brand itself. I mean, I see this in progressives and liberals. If it's somebody they think they can jettison, like an Al Franken, or somebody they can, say, oh, there's the boogeyman, Harvey Weinstein, Trump, Roy Moore, then it's, oh, look, let's pile on. But if it's somebody who, like you said, was a very good journalist, who apparently from so many people was a real like monster and nightmare, especially the victim in all of this. But my thing is that I see duplicity in the way the progressive community has handled this situation, with immediately siding with the media figure, or at least a lot of self-proclaimed feminists.
I'll give you my take on that. I mean, I think that, like I said, I think it comes from the fact that they're frustrated that, Jordan, I mean, look, I mean, whatever side you take on this, I don't think you can deny the fact that he put himself in this position by blurring the boundaries between work and personal life to an extent where every instance of where there are allegations of sexual misconduct comes from some type of blurring of those lines. So if you're a boss, if you have employees, you don't get in a hot tub with your employees, and you don't share a bed with your employees. Okay, that's, I think, a bright line.
Do you think Jank was paying for all this? That's my either Jank or Truth Against the Machine. I mean, I don't know, because he had a hot tub in a hotel. That kind of suite is, I would say, expensive, more than Motel 6.
Right, but I mean, he's, my understanding is he's running he's running his own company, Truth Against the Machine, and he has employees or people that are working for him, and then whatever you want to believe, or whatever side you take on the allegations of the misconduct and the back and forth, you're putting your employees in a very compromising position when you blur the boundaries like that. You know what I'm saying? Regardless of who's paying for the room, regardless of whether Cenk Uygur.
Do most companies have a clause stating that you can't have, like, males and females can't stay in the same hotel room or like sleep in the same? Is that?
I mean, I think it's a matter of common sense rather than law. I mean, Elizabeth and I, we run a small business, so we deal with employee issues just like any other small business employer. And when you're dealing with you have to think about things from your employee's perspective. And I just can never imagine a situation where that would be appropriate. And I'm not judging people for their lifestyle, and I understand that romances happen in the workplace. Okay, I actually met Elizabeth as we were summer interns at the same law firm. Okay, and that's how we met. So I'm sensitive to these issues, and I'm not trying to be like a prude here, and I'm not trying to say that romances may not happen, or people may have sex with each other and their coworkers. But when you're a boss, when you're the employer, you have an obligation that goes beyond just like colleagues in a workplace. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I completely agree with you.
But people are frustrated because I think they like Jordan's work, and what they may feel, whether it's subconscious or not, that he could have done things better. as an employer, as a boss, that wouldn't have, created a situation that now compromises his ability to do his reporting on a platform that, we can say what we want about the Young Turks, HA, but a lot of people still watch them and take them very seriously.
Do you think that they'll eventually get another, reporter?
I mean, I have no idea. I don't know what Cenk Uygur's game plan is, honestly. I don't really know what his. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, he seems kind of like a profiteer to me. So
I've spoken to, yeah. Okay.
If that makes, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think he'll do whatever, puts the most money in his pocket. So if he, I mean, he may try to replace him with somebody, but who would he replace him with?
I mean, I think you could definitely find somebody willing to go ahead and ask, questions of a Donna Brazile. I think there are a lot of people out there, but
somebody from somebody from like the progressive sort of, echo chamber that has sort of, and I don't mean that. I'm trying not to be derogatory. I guess that was derogatory.
You can be derogatory.
But you know what I'm saying.
I'm like 70% of my channel, or 80, 90% is always derogatory.
I'm trying to be more diplomatic these days, HA. I'm trying to go for more diplomacy rather than, but because I think we're in tough times as a country. But in terms of, the progressive echo chamber, right? I mean, there's this sort of cult of progressivism that's bubbled up, and they sort of have to toe the line that Trump is uncool and, he's a big bad meanie. They don't want to, credit him with anything. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Even though, I mean, let's face it, I think that, whatever you want to say about him, he's accomplished some important things that, God forbid Hillary Clinton were in office right now.
Yeah.
And he's been under so much siege. I mean, he has been besieged more than any other president from day one. I mean, it's remarkable that, that the man, gets up in the morning and does anything when you think about it. I mean, can you imagine being the target of so much negativity on a continual?
Well,
I mean, I lose my shit on Twitter when people like troll me every so often, and here's a guy that like basically the entire mainstream media establishment has been trolling him constantly, on a continual basis.
Well, I think Trump, though, I think what Trump does is that he is a master at he won because his opponents were so inept they cheated the only person who would have defeated him, and that only bolstered his ability to then troll the media.
Right.
I think that ultimately the smartest people in the room, it's like the Enron, like you're saying, they're culprits, they're conspirators. It's like the Enron of journalism in America today, where they're saying, oh, we're so smart, look at us, we're the Washington Post, the New York Times, CNN, MSNBC, and then the subsidiary organizations. Oh, we're so smart, we're the cool crowd. And they've yet to realize how inept they are and how powerless they are. And they've yet to realize why Trump won. And so what they're doing is pushing this insane Russian hacking, ridiculous nonsense, which they've actually backed off from in a sense. Now they're saying Russia's influence, which always moving the goalposts.
They bought some Facebook ads.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
which most people saw after the election. Yeah. It's just unbelievable.
It is unbelievable, but when you put it into context that these are the mouthpieces for the criminals, then it's just they're just running PR for people that are going down, and by sort of creating these ridiculous narratives, they're delaying the inevitable, assuming the inevitable happens.
Um, did you see today that Clinton was blaming Obama?
No.
Yeah, she said that it was very difficult to run on change. It was an interview with Hugh Hewitt. It was difficult to run on change because of Obama's policies, something to that effect.
Okay.
Yeah. When do you think the acceptance of that they messed up the election or she messed up, will that ever happen?
Will she ever accept it?
Yeah.
No. No, she's gonna when if she ends up going to jail, which she should go to jail, she'll tell herself that Putin succeeded in brainwashing the American public against her. I mean, these are people who think in terms of grand conspiracies targeted to them. I mean, they're complete narcissists. So, no, she'll never have that realization. Maybe in prison. I mean, maybe she'll. Sometimes people, go through transformations in prison. That could happen. Sometimes they don't.
Now, I believe that she will get indicted on either, the email, the Espionage Act, or the campaign finance, or uranium, or something, because there's so many crimes committed. But do you think that she would lose a trial?
Well, I would hope so. But that's a good question. That gets to the question of whether our legal system is capable of prosecuting the Clintons. Now, Comey, when he made his press statement in 2016, where he announced that she wasn't going to be indicted for the emails, he basically said, my interpretation of what he said is that the Clintons are too big to indict. But that was Comey under Obama. Okay, the question now is whether, however the legal prosecution takes shape, if it takes shape, and it could take shape in any number of ways, but it presumably would be under a Trump administration, maybe a special prosecutor, maybe an attorney general. I don't know. I mean, there's all these sealed indictments out there. Trump said he was going to do an announcement when he got back from Asia, but I haven't seen the announcement.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, we're all kind of waiting with bated breath here, right?
What do you think will take place the day that it's announced, look, you know what, Sessions recused himself, but the DOJ and new FBI Director Christopher Wray found Clinton on, not the Espionage Act and not campaign finance laws, but an obscure law that had to do with taking money linked to the Uranium Act, or sorry, the uranium deal. What do you think? How do you think the media will react initially? I think that eventually they'll all turn on both Clintons. But what do you think will take place? Would take place?
Well, initially you're going to have. I mean, the thing is they're already jumping off the Clinton. I mean, they've been jumping off the Clinton ship for some time now. I mean, Gillibrand just came out and said that Bill should have resigned after Lewinsky, and don't forget that there may be prosecutions that could come out of sexual harassment against Bill Clinton. I mean, that's another way that this all takes shape. I mean, you pointed to three possibilities associated with the sort of the Hillary Clinton emails and foundation angle, but Bill Clinton's a whole different angle. And this is a guy that was on Jeff Epstein's Lolita Express.
Yeah.
He's a bad dude. He's a really, really bad dude. And, I mean, we have a whole other line of what's going on involving sexual predation. Okay. And so who knows, maybe that's the angle it comes in from. I mean, there's sort of all these different paths that can happen.
And I think in terms of the mainstream media's reaction, I mean, you can tell that the thing that freaks them out the most is anything dealing with pedophilia and pedophile rings and sexual misconduct, because that's the shit they don't want to go. That's the shit that they don't touch at all. The mainstream media, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's the shit they cover up the most. So maybe that's the angle. Maybe that's the angle that would be sort of. I guess my long-winded answer to HA is when they go down, the reaction is going to depend on how they go down.
Yeah.
I mean, the mainstream media could just collapse in one fell swoop. Also, I mean, these companies. So Trump is he's holding up the Time Warner merger, and I think he's making them spin off CNN as a condition of the merger, right? I mean, that's a very interesting legal avenue against the mainstream media, because maybe CNN can't survive as a standalone company. Maybe they've looked at the books, right? And they're like, fuck it, make them spin off CNN. All right, AT&T will probably be like, sure, we don't want CNN. So maybe, then cast CNN to the wolves, right? You put a lot of pressure on them. I mean, that's a bad organization. I mean, they've been lying to the American people for a long time.
Oh, CNN is garbage.
Yeah.
Absolute garbage. Well, listen, Jared, I want to talk to you more, but I have actually, it's a busy day. Two other journalists I'm speaking to.
Yeah.
And I want to thank you for always just being honest and truthful, and for being a champion for so many people. When the DNC screwed over millions of people, there was you and a couple other people, and there weren't many people fighting back. And I really appreciate you fighting back for all of us. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. That means a lot to me, HA, and it's always a pleasure to speak with you. So I hope we can do this again in the near future.
Absolutely. I'd be honored. And say hi to Elizabeth and the family for me.
Okay, will do.
All right. Thank you, Jared.
Okay, thank you, HA.
Thank you.